Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea, back with another Friday previewing another big weekend. Probably, like you said yesterday, probably the best slate for college football of the season. First, we'll get into a quick recap of our plays from last night. Korea, pretty sweat-free win for you. It was a bit sweaty in the first quarter, but in the second quarter, JMU, I think it was 22-0 JMU in the second quarter, I believe. What did you take away from your one winner last night?
Yeah, pretty much. It was just back in JMU at home. It was a little scary, as you mentioned. Vasco had that. I think it was the hitch and go route. That they found that big touchdown. I think it was like a third down conversion, kind of quieted the crowd a little bit after JMU kind of just went down the field. But I was more backing JMU. And Alonzo Barnett. Kind of whether he could get it on the ground or through the air, and he was pretty much just relying on Petaway as well. They were getting the run game going, and I knew as soon as they were getting the run game going, I knew it was going to be a long night for Coastal Carolina. Obviously, they couldn't really stop the run. Then defensively, they just, Coastal offensively, they couldn't do anything. It was just all JMU defense all day. They stopped the run. That was pretty much the game plan, forcing Vasco to throw, and he did not look good at all. And that's pretty much what I was backing. Just Ethan Vasco, as someone who has backed him before, he stinks. So I knew this was a bad spot for him, obviously on the road, and it was obviously a little sweaty after the first TD. But after I saw a stat, I think after that first drive, I think he was like 1 for like 4 with like two interceptions and 2 passing yards. So the JMU secondary really locked down after just stopping the run, forcing him to throw, and Vasco couldn't throw. So obviously that had that pick six. I think that was pretty much the sealer there. But I think what I'd say, obviously a catch. When JMU went down the field after they pretty much responded immediately after Coastal Carolina scored. They went down the field, got that nice touchdown pass, and they went for two. Surprisingly, I didn't know why they went for two, but I mean, hey, they caught him off guard and went for two and got it. So that was at that point. I was thinking, this is probably going to be a winner there. And then the pick six was the dealer there, the sealer there, obviously. The big boy pick six for JMU. So that was a nice one there. So obviously pretty sweat free for JMU. First half -5.5. Didn't really have to worry about that in the second quarter. Obviously, just mostly targeting JMU at home in a bounce back spot. And I liked them full game, and they easily covered the full game. Obviously, winning, I think it was like 36 or something, 39-7, just absolutely routing Coastal Carolina at home. So that was pretty much sweat-free winner for me, obviously. So I'll gladly take that. So 1-0 day for me. Ari, how'd you do yesterday?
Yeah, it was a tough loss for me. It was sweaty early, with Cleveland scoring one run in the first, and then Detroit tying it in the second. But then it was scoreless the third and the fourth, and so it was 2 runs going to the fifth. Just needing one run, basically needing, or I guess not a nerfy, but less than 1.5 runs essentially in the fifth. And Jose Ramirez and Zach McKinstry trade solo home runs in the fifth inning to push it over 3.5. And then the runs kind of started to pour in after that in the kind of the sixth, seventh, and ninth innings, off the bullpens. The Guardians, I think it was David Fry that hit the go-with home run, but I believe. So they pushed it to a game 5. So now it's going to be Skubal against. I'm not sure who's going to go for Cleveland in game 5, but it's going to be Skubal in game 5 for Detroit. So we'll see how that goes out. Obviously, we also have. Neither of us have a play in that game, but tonight's game 5 between the Padres and Dodgers tonight, so that'll be a big series. And then the Tigers, the winner plays the Mets, obviously, and then the winner of Detroit Cleveland will play the Yankees in the ALCS. So we could be seeing a Subway Series potentially in the World Series with the way that things are looking, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, or you mentioned it first yesterday. Tough loss for you. The Guardians' offense finally showed up. We were talking about how they hadn't scored scored a run in 20 innings, and they finally scored a run in the first. And then, their offense finally started to get things turning. It was a little quiet. You mentioned throughout the first 5, and then obviously Jose Ramirez. You had an APB out for him, and he finally showed up. Had that 418-foot homer from the right side of the plate. And then obviously you mentioned Detroit equalized it in the bottom half of the fifth. So, tough to see that first 5 under 3.5 go over for you. You mentioned it, 2 winner go home games tonight and tomorrow. Tonight with the Padres and Dodgers, winner plays the Mets. You mentioned big game. Personally, I'm on the Padres because obviously I have that future on them. And then tomorrow, Tigers Guardians. You mentioned I don't believe we have anyone listed for the Guardians yet, but as you mentioned, Scooball will be going for the Tigers. So obviously, looks like the Tigers may try to close out here because Scooball, he's been pretty shut down, lights out throughout this postseason. But maybe the Guardians have a little bit of life on the road. So we'll see how that goes when they go back home. So big game tonight and tomorrow for the game winner go home games for the MLB. But tonight, obviously tonight and tomorrow we got some college football, and that's where we're going to be going first. For me, obviously with the huge weekend here, I have first tonight we're going to go to the Big Ten here, taking Maryland at home minus the 10.5 here, minus 120 here. Look, Ari, I know you've personally seen Northwestern's offense before, and it's we could go on and on about how bad.
Although last week they weren't as bad last week, surprisingly, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just a bad spot for Indiana last week. Obviously, I think that lake and that home field advantage for Northwestern is really evident here. But on the road here, I think this is where they struggle. Obviously, we've seen them on the road, and that's where Ari backed them last time, and we know what happened there. And that's pretty much why I'm backing Maryland here, obviously. On the road here, we talk about how Northwestern, their defense is more run stopping, but that's really great for Maryland because they're better in the air, obviously 12th in the nation in passing with Billy Edwards. I think he's the Billy Edwards, the 5th or whatever. He's one of the better quarterbacks out of the Big Ten right now in terms of, just passing ability. Even though they lost on the road last week, to Indiana, this Indiana team, obviously, I say, one of the sneakier teams on both sides of the ball. Obviously, they look a little fraudulent, but I'd love to see them go against like a similar team like an Illinois or a Nebraska or something. We'll see how that goes. But in terms of Maryland tonight, I love more backing their offense here. Obviously, to just get the things done in the air. Obviously, Northwestern not the greatest secondary. In terms of how they cover. We saw Malik Murphy, go to Northwestern and be able to carve through that secondary. So I think Billy Edwards will have a field day at home against this Northwestern secondary. And offensively, obviously, Northwestern absolutely horrible. They're outside top 100 in almost everything. I want to say they're bottom 5. I think in almost every single offensive statistical category in terms of offensive production. So just a horrible offense. In Northwestern, they can't. And Maryland, they have a slightly better defense at home as well. So I'm just and with how their offense into them. In terms of the pass, I think that's what they lean on tonight. So just backing the points here with Maryland to get things done by, 10.5 here, against a Northwestern team that just obviously they came off a, close upset at home against Indiana, but I think this is where they come back down to life, obviously going on the road, to Maryland, obviously with that passing offense. I think Billy Edwards has himself a day. So I'm back in Maryland on the points here, minus 10.5 here, minus 120 for tonight. Then going to tomorrow here, obviously the first play, we're back in Rutgers here, straight up on the money line, minus 125, backing them at home, Ari. I know obviously you have Rutgers team total over, so this is obviously kudos to you here, but I'm back in Rutgers in a bounce back spot at home. Obviously, they just went on the road, obviously tough matchup, and you can obviously point to the weather. It was just really, really bad weather. It was like windy and just a wild weather game in Nebraska. That game, really close scoring, 14-7. Both quarterbacks didn't play well, but the run game for Rutgers was still kind of going for the Scarlet Knights. Obviously, with Monangai, he was getting himself going, but the Rutgers, the Nebraska's D-line obviously a lot better, and I think that's what pretty much what it was, just the battle of the trenches. Nebraska was kind of winning at the defensive line. Now I think they have a better matchup at home against Wisconsin, who has struggled, in times, in terms of being on the road. We see them, obviously they had that big game against USC where, they were up for a little while, but, in terms of, how they really were, they just really, fell apart in the second half. I think this is where Rutgers takes advantage back at home. Obviously, we've seen, some shaky games for Rutgers, but I think this is where they get back to going to, how they play football with on the ground with Monangai, winning at the battle, winning at the line. I think they win the battle in the trenches here, just establishing the run game with Monangai. And then if they need to, obviously, that's the thing with Rutgers. If once they really get the ground going, obviously all the teams are going to stack the box, and they can run their RPOs that they like to do with Kaliak Manis and their receiving options. So I think this is what Rutgers do. I think that's their game plan. I think that's how they execute a win tomorrow. So I'm taking Rutgers on the money line here, minus 125 tomorrow. And then we're going to go to arguably one of the games of the night, obviously, a huge slate, as already mentioned, tomorrow. Going to K-State, Colorado here, taking that over 56 for the full game here, minus 110 here. when you look at these two teams, right? This kind of you remember that Stanford Colorado game last year, Ari, where it was just back and forth. This is going to be that game, right? Because K-State, right? We know they can run the ball, right? Colorado has a better run defense, right? But it's not great, right? And we know Giddens is going to establish himself, and he almost established himself pretty much every game. I think he has a big game. I've seen his, I think his rushing props at 97.5 yards. So the books think he has a big game. I've seen Avery Johnson's line at around 60 or 60.5. So the books think obviously Avery Johnson thinks books think Johnson has a big game as well on the ground. So, and if the K-State wants to, at least win this game or obviously keep things close, I think they obviously lean on the run here. And then Colorado, well, that's what they're going to have to do in terms of passing. We know how Colorado, one of the better passing teams in the country, and that's what they're going to have to do here. Colorado, in terms of their passing offense, we know how good it is. Third in the country. They're going to have to depend on the pass if they really want to be in this game. Obviously, we know how good Shedeur Sanders is, and the K-State D-line is probably going to make things hard. Obviously, you try to get sacks, but that's the thing with Colorado. Shedeur Sanders is going to escape and make a play out of nothing. And I think if Colorado is going to want to make this game interesting, it's going to be with half their passing offense. Obviously, their rushing offense, not really the greatest. And then K-State in terms of the air, they've been a little finicky in the air sometimes, and we see it. Last time we saw them on the road, obviously that was that BYU game where that one controversial fan, said he was going to shove something up somewhere, but and I don't know how. I hope he's not making any bets like that, because I think Colorado with their passing offense, I think they can make things interesting again. I just think, that line's going in Colorado's favor, but I'm not really backing a side here. I just think there's going to be a lot of points. I think there's going to be a lot of them between K-State and Colorado. I think this could end. This can be another overtime game, maybe like a something like that, just something super high scoring, really back and forth. I really like both offenses here to really show out. Obviously, Colorado at home with their passing offense. We know how Shedeur Sanders is one of the better passers, if not the best quarterback in the country right now in terms of just being a pocket passer and just slinging the ball. And then K-State with their running offense with Giddens. I'm thinking it's going to be a really high scoring game. So I'm just backing the points here over 56 and between K-State and Colorado tomorrow night. And then we're going to a very, very ugly play, Ari. It is one of my ugliest plays that I've given out, but we're giving out Mississippi State plus the 34 here, minus 112. If you want to buy it up to 35 to get that obviously big number of 5 touchdowns, go ahead. That's right now minus 130, but I like 34 right now where that line is. The only reason I'm taking this, right, it's a look-ahead spot for Georgia, right? Georgia, obviously, they coming off that, big win on the road against Auburn. They come, or was that, I forgot. I think that was on the road, or was that at home? I forget. Either way, now they got to play Mississippi State this week at home before they got to go to Texas, right? And I love fading teams who have a look ahead spot, because they're not going to really put out their star guys. They want to make sure their key guys are healthy. Obviously, it's a big game. This is arguably, you can say right now, for either a spot in the SEC championship or not, in terms of how the top 3 teams in Texas, Alabama, and Georgia are playing right now. Big game next week for Georgia, obviously, to kind of rebounce back after the tough loss in Alabama. Now, obviously, have to go to Texas here. And obviously, I don't really like that Red River rivalry game and how it's scheduled for Texas, because obviously they have the same thing. Obviously, they can't really overlook Oklahoma, but obviously they have a look-ahead spot against Georgia next week at home. So I want nothing to do with that game. I'm just going to
Looks like we may have lost Korea for a second. Oh, you're back, I think.
Sorry, Wi-Fi cut out 1 second, but it's pretty much just back in Mississippi State here. Just back in Mississippi State. I don't like the fact that Texas has a really hard schedule. So I was going to look at Oklahoma, but Ari, last time I saw Oklahoma, right, they got lucky to beat Auburn, right, and that was the luckiest game of the year. I was looking at Oklahoma team total under, but that's getting a little too high. So I'm gonna go to the other game here. If this doesn't hit, I'm not going to beat myself up too much over it, because it's such a large spread. I don't like taking large spreads, but in terms of look ahead spots, I do. So just back in Mississippi State here just to keep this thing, not way too out of hand. Obviously, we saw how Auburn, with their defense was, able to keep things interesting. Obviously, Mississippi State, not the strongest defense, but I think they can make things interesting, obviously, against Georgia, who have a look-ahead spot to Texas next week. And then the final game of the night, we're going to go to the island, Ari. I love going to Hawaii, the island here. And I know you see, obviously, Hawaii plus only -1 time. Everyone's going to think, oh, my gosh, they're playing Boise State. Gene T's going to run for 6 touchdowns on them. Oh, my gosh, why aren't you taking Boise State plus minus the points? That's free. Yeah, I bet. Hawaii, very good at home, obviously. They're coming off that emotional loss on the road to San Diego State where they should have won that game. San Diego State, one of the worst teams offensively, right? Now they go back home, right? And they play a lot better at home. We saw that game against UCLA where they were pretty much leading throughout that entire game. They should have won that game. They could have won that game, but obviously UCLA had that miraculous comeback. I'm just backing Hawaii tomorrow night to really make this thing interesting, a little bit closer than a lot of people think. We know Ashton T is going to have a great day, right? I saw his anytime touchdown prop. It's minus 1,400 on the books, people. His 2 touchdowns is like minus 500. But 3 touchdowns is plus money. And last week it was minus money. So I don't know. Maybe Vegas thinks Hawaii keep this interesting. So that's why I'm thinking Hawaii keeps this interesting as well. Alongside with their pass game, obviously, this is pretty much the script for it. Obviously, we know Boise is going to run the ball with Gene T, and that just means Hawaii is going to have to throw the ball with Schrager. Like I said, they play better at home. And I think Hawaii keeps this interesting on the island, obviously. I know a lot of people are going to be taking Boise State money line and loading them up in the parlays and Boise State first half spread and whatever you want to call it. But I think Hawaii keeps this interesting on the island. Obviously, their defense is a little bit better, in terms of the competition, better than Utah State's the last week. So, Utah State, my God, they are horrible. But this week, I think it's a better matchup for Hawaii at home. Obviously, they have that, Hawaii's weird. They always play better at home, but once they're away from the island, they really stink. Right. And I love them in this spot, backing them at home, obviously late night game. Let's get weird on the island, right? Back in Hawaii here, plus the 21 at home. I think their offense with the past game, I think keeps them in this game. I also was looking at Hawaii team total over 19.5. I think that's a great play as well. If you don't want to take the full game spread, if you're a little scared of that big number, I do like Hawaii team total over 19.5 as well as an other play. I think Hawaii's offense, obviously, Boise State's defense is not the greatest. I think their offense is what obviously keeps them in these games with just handing the ball off to Gene Team, letting him go crazy, and obviously having the occasional play action pass with Madsen. But I just think Hawaii keeps this one interesting. So I do like Hawaii on the full game spread, plus the 21. Like I said, if you don't want to take that big number, I also like Hawaii team total over 19.5. I think they get to 20 points tomorrow against Boise State at home. So that's my college football card for the entire weekend here. 5 plays back in Maryland tonight. Minus a 10.5 against Northwestern, minus 120. And then tomorrow, 4 plays. Rutgers straight up on the money line here, minus 125. K-State, Colorado, over 56 tomorrow night. Mississippi State in an ugly play. Look ahead spot, obviously, plus the 34. Like I said, you can buy it up to 35 and if you want to for the 5 touchdown spread. And then Hawaii on the spread, plus the 21. If you're scared of that big number as well against Boise State and that rushing offense for Ashton GT, like I said, you can get Hawaii team total over 19.5. I know it's around minus 110 on DraftKings right now. Like I said, I think Hawaii's offense is really going to keep this one close. So that's why I'm back in the spread. So those are my picks for college football this weekend. Big weekend of college football, as Ari mentioned. We have plenty of other big games throughout the entire slate. Ari, where's your eyes looking at for this entire weekend of college football?
Yeah, 3 plays for me, starting with the Utah tonight, backing them off the loss against Arizona 2 weeks ago on their bye, backing them off their bye against ASU tonight. As of now, the reports say that Rising's going to play. Obviously, it's not. But this play, I like this play with or without. I like this play before I even saw he was playing. This is really just backing, Whittingham off a bye, extra week to prepare for ASU. They shut down Scalabo in the run game, and you make ASU one-dimensional. And then on the other end, I see Micah Bernard running all over the ASU defense. So I like this play with or without. I like this play before I even saw Rising was expected to play. Just backing the Utah defense and then the run game with Bernard. So, if Rising plays, it's kind of a cherry on top, but, you know, until we actually see him play, tonight, I'm not sure for sure if he will play. But again, this is a play I like with or without. This is a play I like with or without Rising. So Utah first half -3.5 again off their bye, just backing Kyle Whittingham. Their coaching staff, their culture. Losing their last game before their bye at home, a rare home loss. Just backing them at home, or just backing them off their bye, I should say, against ASU. And then going to San Jose State, who's on the road against Colorado State, basically a pick 'em. San Jose State's off to a really good start this year, 4-1, despite losing their coach to Arizona. And then against Colorado State, who's coming off a loss against Oregon State, beat UTEP, lost a pretty ugly game against Colorado. This is really just backing the San Jose State offense. I don't see Colorado State being able to contain Nick Nash in that offense. And then, I think defensively they can do enough to contain Colorado State. So just backing San Jose State's offense and Nick Nash, and basically a pick 'em with them off to, again, a 4-1, a really solid start despite losing their head coach to Arizona. They got the Navy coach, I think it was, the Navy coach. So he's really filled in nicely for them anyway, and rebuilt their culture. And then my third play is just fading two offenses of Penn State and USC. Penn State traveling across the country. If this game was at Penn State, I'd probably be backing Penn State on the spread. I do think that they win, but with them traveling across the country, I'm just backing both defenses essentially. USC is coming off the loss against Minnesota, pretty big upset, obviously. And then Penn State, they've won the past two games, but the offense has not looked good against UCLA or Illinois. And, USC's defense, we saw them really improving in the week 0, I think it was, against LSU, and they've been pretty steadily, at least a lot better than they were last year, which obviously isn't saying that much, but they've been better than last year. And then Penn State, we know their defense is going to be good. They're able to travel, at home or on the road, their defense. So it's really just fitting both offenses and backing both defenses. Again, I like Penn State in this game. And if the game was at Penn State, I'd probably be taking Penn State with the points. But with them just being on the road across the country, I'm just backing both defenses and fitting both offenses here with the first half under.
Ari, I want to let you know we were this close away from another whale of the weekend because I do have Utah first half as well. I got it at 3 earlier in the week. I was either Maryland or Utah. So for people who want to know, if Ari is legitimate, I am on Utah as well. Even like I said, I was more I guess more of a depender on the Cam Rising news, but I saw earlier in the week that he is playing, and then I've seen a lot more reports from local beat reporters from Utah, been saying that, he is going to be playing tonight. So signs are pointing that Cam Rising is playing tonight. Obviously, as someone who has, been in that situation where, quick funny story. I was writing for Wazoo. This was what WCU Utah on a Thursday night. Everyone assumed Cam Rising was playing, and all of a sudden we see Cam Rising on the sideline. And everyone's like, what happened? It was like this big scandal about how Whittingham was lying to the press about how his status the whole week. So I'm not going to take anything Cam Rising serious until I see him throw a football on the field. But I do like Utah either way. You mentioned, with their defense, I think they do bounce back here. If they're going to stop the run, obviously with Scadaboo, that's kind of, how ASU really gets their offense going, really one-dimensional. They've had a bunch of quarterback changes, but they kind of lean on Levitt, but it's more of a revolving door per se for Dillingham and that whole ASU offense. I think Utah gets out to a good first half lead as well for you. So I like that play -3.5. And then tomorrow I was leaning San Jose State on the money line as well. You talked about, they had a close game against Nevada at home, but obviously now they're going on the road to Colorado State, and Colorado State, obviously they had that close win at Oregon State, obviously very tough double overtime loss, but I think that kind of comes back down to earth for them. Obviously, they come back home, against a San Jose State team who obviously avoided an upset loss. I think this is a good spot to back San Jose State. The one thing about San Jose State, obviously, is the quarterback change is a little bit of a concern, but I still like the fact that that whole San Jose State offense you mentioned. Nick Nash, one of the I personally watched him play, and boy is he a talent. And that whole I'd say that whole offense, arguably for San Jose State, one of the sneakier offenses in the country in terms of how much size they have and how much downfield vertical ability they have to stretch the field. So I love San Jose State here, just on the money line here, minus 105 on the road here at Colorado State. Colorado State's offense a little suspect as well. I mean, you mentioned Penn State, USC. Obviously, it's been a little bit weird year. Obviously, in terms of the travel, teams that are going from east to west have really struggled to cover the spread versus teams going west to east like Cal or Stanford. They've suddenly done a lot better in that situation. So and maybe that's just because most of those teams have never really flown all the way across the country. In terms of like Penn State going to USC, Michigan going to Washington, Ohio State going to Oregon. You haven't really seen any of those teams go out there. It's always been the opposite way. So I do like that play for you, first half under. Penn State's defense is still going to be there no matter what, and I like Penn State to really just really establish their run defense and pass defense through the air. Obviously, Miller Moss is one of the better quarterbacks, I'd say, in terms of, a developing quarterback. USC, I think they're starting to come back down to earth a little bit. Obviously, they had that big week 1 win, obviously, against LSU, and, everyone was hyping them up, and then they've kind of started to come back down to earth a little bit. Obviously, they had that tough loss to Michigan, obviously, and then they had that tough loss last week to Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota, we talked about having one of the better pass defenses in the country. And now they got to go play Penn State at home, obviously, one of the better defenses holistically in the country. And, USC on the other side, obviously, they have a pretty good defense as well. And I think, they can hold – if they can hold the run defense or, Penn State's run offense, to the best of their ability and make draw or throw, I think that's where USC shines in the first half here. So I do like that first half under, with the Penn State with the travel and USC at home. I think, a little bit of defensive first half here. Both teams kind of still figuring each other out here. So I like Penn State USC first half under 24.5 for you. So those are always 3 bets for today and tomorrow, getting into the whole college football bag, and then obviously mine as well. But obviously, we still got Sunday. I got 3 picks for you on Sunday here. First, we're going to go to Green Bay here, taking the Cardinals and Packers here. First half over 23.5 points, minus 122. Arizona, Green Bay here. You look at these two teams, right? Arizona, we know how their offense is going to show up. We saw it last week. They had that comeback win, against the 49ers where, they had to, crawl and, a little bit of magic go their way. But, I still think in this spot, obviously, in terms of defense, I think, they're going to attack the air, obviously, obviously they know we've seen Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, they have Connor, and then obviously Kyler Murray with his legs as well. I think that's going to be the key factor. Kyler Murray really using his legs and to being able to scramble out here. And obviously the Packers on the other side, we've seen the Cardinals defense, and the Cardinals defense is the one thing that really is the factor that pulls people away from betting on the Cardinals, just because their defense is pretty suspect. So I've seen a lot of people taking the Packers minus the 5 here, but I don't really like the Packers spread here. I think that spread is a little bit finicky for a reason. I think this is just going to be a lot of points here in the first half. You look at both offenses, both pretty prolific offenses. Even with the whole Romeo Dube situation for Green Bay, I still think, they still find their better pass catchers. Obviously, Christian Watson, I think Dontavian Wicks might be getting a good chunk of receptions this week as well, just in terms of the pass game as well. We know Josh Jacobs on the ground as well. He's definitely going to get his carries and his looks as well. And I think that's going to carry for first half over here. I think there's going to be a lot of points here. So I'm just backing points for the first half between the Cardinals and Packers here. First half over 23.5. I think there's both offenses really show out in the first half here. So Cardinals Packers first half over 23.5 here. Pretty key number, obviously. So we just need 24, and that's obviously going back to last week's play with the Bills and Texans. Obviously, we just need a couple touchdowns and maybe a field goal and a touchdown from maybe either team, and obviously that's a winner there. Or maybe 3 touchdowns from one and the field goal from the other. Obviously, that's what a winner there as well. So obviously that's all we need there. And then obviously continuing on, I like the Bengals Sunday night game against the Giants on the road. I like them minus 3.5, minus 112. I like them before the Malik Neighbors news. I like him even more with the Malik Neighbors news. Obviously, Malik Neighbors once again ruled out for concussion protocol. even though he was at the Travis Scott concert. But that's another conversation for another time. Either way, obviously no Malik Neighbors, and obviously we saw how the Giants, they went on the road to Seattle, got that win. But I think that obviously this is I'm more backing the Bengals. This is more system play here, zigzag method. If you don't know what it is, you're backing a team that didn't cover the previous week for facing a team that did cover. Obviously, the Bengals did not cover. They lost last week and they pushed, but technically, almost you can say they didn't cover against the Ravens. And then obviously the Giants. Not only did they cover, they got the outright win, obviously, on the road against Seattle. Now coming home with obviously, I think they play a much better offense here, in the Bengals. The Seahawks offense obviously is still, it's not bad, obviously, considering how we saw last night. There's just, some kinks that they need to work out there. But the way this Bengals offense works, obviously, with, Jamar Chase and, T. Higgins, and the way we saw how last week their offense is really getting their things going against the Ravens. Tough loss just because their defense is not the greatest, but this is the Giants offense here. Okay, they're not facing the Ravens, they're not facing Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and all those guys. No Malik Neighbors. I like the Bengals even more here, -3.5. Just to finally get a good win in a bounce back spot against the Giants, who obviously are coming off an emotional win on the road. Daniel Jones had himself a great game, but I think he comes back down to reality for a little bit here. Even though, again, the Bengals defense, not the strongest, I think the Bengals do just enough to get the win on the road here. So I'm taking the Bengals -3.5 here. And then I'm going to arguably, I think I say the game of the weekend per se. Some might say that, but I'm taking the Lions here -3. Here -112. I know the people on the Cowboys at home and the Cowboys to get their bounce back, because we saw how the Lions did against the Seahawks on that Monday night game, and obviously how that worked. But I think this is the Dan Campbell revenge spot, because obviously we saw how, what was it, last year's game with the whole guy, I think, what was it, Taylor Decker reporting he was an eligible receiver, but he wasn't eligible, but the referees thought he wasn't, even though he was eligible. Just all that nonsense. Obviously, that left a sour taste in the mouth of the Detroit Lions, and I think obviously they get their bounce back here on the road. This is not the same Cowboys team as last year. In fact, you can arguably say it's worse. This Cowboys team a lot worse in terms of how their offense is, very, very one-dimensional in terms of the pass. Obviously, they just can't get anything going on the ground. And then you look at the other side. Well, they can't stop the run, and just you look at how the Seahawks did against Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, making them they were getting 5-6 yards a carry. I think the Cowboys, if they have to do that against that same Detroit Lions offense, I think it's going to be a long day for that Cowboys, team. So I'm just taking the Lions here -3. I think they do. I think they just. This is a BTA play, Ari. If you know what a BTA means, means belt to the behind. I think the Lions going to go into Dallas and put belt to ass. I really think so. This is the same. This is the Ravens, right? Just in the NFC. I'm telling you right now, with a better quarterback, with better skill players, you can say, arguably a better defense in terms of how the Lions have been playing up front. I think they get pressure on Dak with Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, and I think he's going to be that Taylor Guyton, that rookie who TJ Watt was absolutely having his way with the other week, and obviously Cowboys coming off that emotional win. But look, they played the Steelers. Steelers have no offense, and look, Justin Fields looks like a quarterback one week, looks like a running back the next week, and I know some people are going to love me talking about Justin Fields. But anyways, here, back in the Lions here, -3 at home. I think they get the job done. This is a BTA play. Cowboys, obviously, this is, I think their offense does do a little bit more, but the Lions, I think they just establish the run. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to run through that team. David Montgomery is going to run through that team. It's going to be a long day for the Cowboys. I think with their run defense, I don't think, this isn't Najee they're facing. This is arguably the best 1-2 tandem in football that they're going against at home. So I think the Lions just establish the run and make this a long game for the Cowboys. So those are my 3 plays for the weekend. Lions -3 in Dallas, Bengals -3.5 Sunday night game in New York. And obviously the Cardinals and Packers first half over the 23.5 points in Green Bay. Those are my 3 plays for Sunday. Ari, what have you cooked up for this NFL slate?
Yeah, 2 plays for me. Starting off with the Eagles coming off their bye after they got crushed, or not crushed, but they lost to Tampa Bay with how banged up they were before the bye, and now they're out of the bye. They should get everybody back healthy, Brown and Devontae, and facing the Browns team is just in a really bad state right now. everything. And I think I saw that they're expected to get some guys back on the offensive line, so it should be a little bit better, but it's still not great. And you still just have Watson playing with like no confidence. It seems like right now either. So I mean, I'm just doing first half to avoid the backdoor cover by Cleveland just because it's 9.5 for the full game. I think the Eagles could easily win by 10 plus. I think they could cover, but I'm just going with the first half here just to avoid the potential. They're up by 14 or whatever, and just a late touchdown or whatever. So I'm just taking them off the bye with everybody healthy back, or with the receivers healthy back, I should say, to just be up by at least a touchdown, I would say, at halftime. So Eagles -5 in that first half, and then you have the Bucks going up against first career start for Radler. So it's tough to know what to expect, from him because he was super highly regarded out of high school, and he showed flashes of his upside in college, but just wasn't consistent enough, obviously. But I think this is a bad matchup for him in his first start against the Bucs secondary is not great, but their defensive line likes to blitz a lot on their Bulls, and I think we're going to see that a lot. And so, if Radler can do well in his first career start against a heavy blitz, defense, then props to him, obviously. But I'm just backing the Bucs to bounce back after I think they should have won last against the Falcons, and so that was a tough loss, obviously. And so just backing the Bucs to bounce back, which I think their offense is going to be able to do what it wants, essentially on the Saints defense, and then we're just going to see Bulls just say, Rattler, show us what you got, and just blitz him heavily and make him play under pressure a lot. So just backing the Bucs on the spread for the game -3.5, and then sticking to first half for the Eagles coming off their bye with everyone healthy against the Browns team is just not in a good state of mind overall right now.
I mean, you said it perfectly for the Eagles. I mean, I was about to say I love both of those picks for you. You mentioned the Eagles obviously coming off the bye. Their last loss was that brutal loss on the road against the Buccaneers, where their offense didn't show up, excuse me. But you mentioned, they didn't have AJ Brown, no Devontae Smith. Just a really tough day for that offense. Now they come back home, their offense gets a little healthier, obviously. And they're facing the Browns, who, obviously, as you mentioned, one of the just worst teams in football right now. Just no offensive rhythm. Deshaun and, that whole offense just looked completely not in sync right now. I saw a little clip of, I think it was from the Raiders game. Deshaun, I think it was a 4th and goal. Deshaun was already walking off the field, already assuming that they're going to go for the points. Meanwhile, Stefanski and the whole offense saying let's go for it. So I think there's some early cracks between Deshaun and that whole coaching staff and that offense. So I think some signs are starting to show that the Browns might be one of the worst teams in football again. So, I like the Eagles here. Just cover the first half spread here, -5.5. I like it. Like you said, that full game total is creeping up a lot, and I don't really like that full game total. You mentioned Browns could potentially backdoor with, some kind of field goal or whatnot. So I like the Eagles first half here, -5.5. And you mentioned the Bucs here. I love the Bucs -3, -3.5, whatever. Look, it's Spencer Rattler's first start in the NFL, and obviously no discredit to him, but obviously this is just a horrible matchup for him. If it was against any other team that didn't blitz heavy like the Buccaneers, obviously I would maybe give him a little bit more of a chance here, but it's just a horrible matchup for him. Obviously going obviously at home against a Bucs team, coming off an emotional loss on the road. Obviously, as you mentioned, should have won that game, but just unfortunate loss there. And obviously I think this is a good bounce back spot for them. Obviously you mentioned Todd Bowles just gonna blitz heavy and see what Spencer Rattler can do. We've seen some, I guess, clips from him, whether it was from his short time, whether in high school or whether him at Oklahoma before he went transferred to South Carolina, and obviously before going to the draft here. Well, here's your time, buddy. Here's your first NFL start. You got to play against one of the best rushing teams in the league outside of the 49ers. So good luck. So I love that play for you. Back in the Bucs here on the road. Bounce back spot -3.5. So recap the full weekend here. First Friday, Saturday. I got 5 for you tonight with Maryland -10.5. Rutgers full game money line tomorrow. K-State, Colorado over 56 tomorrow. Mississippi State to cover the 34. I also like 35 tomorrow for people who like to buy it up a half point. And then Hawaii as well, plus the 21, -125. Like I said as well, you can also take Hawaii team total over 19.5 points as well. Going to Ari's weekend plays for Friday and Saturday. Utah, first half -3.5. Tonight, -102, almost even money there. San Jose State almost in a pick 'em there on the money line on the road, -105. And then backing both defenses in LA, Penn State, USC, first half under 24.5 there, -115. And then going to Sunday with my three best bets here, the Cardinals, Packers, in Green Bay, first half over 23.5 there, -122. The Bengals -3.5 Sunday night game in East Rutherford, New Jersey against the New York Giants, -112. And then the Lions putting BTA on the Cowboys in Jerry World, -112, -3 there. And then going to Ari's Sunday plays here, just a couple of them. Eagles first half -5.5, obviously fading the Browns and that horrible offense on the road there. And then finally back in the Bucks here, -3.5. Spencer Rattler, horrible start. I'd say horrible spot for him. Obviously, first career start in the NFL. Got to go against one of the best pass rushing teams in the NFL. Obviously, you can find all of these plays on our Twitter below. Obviously, we will have our full video posted soon. We'll have today's plays post momentarily. We'll have Saturday's plays posted tonight, and then Sunday's plays posted Saturday afternoon as well. We want to appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. That's Ari. I'm Kriya. We'll be back Monday to recap how we did this weekend. Of course, preview the interesting Monday night game between the Bills and Jets. New coaching staff for the Bills, for the Jets, obviously, completely new team. We'll see how that goes, but that's going to do it. Sorry. I'm Kriya. See you guys on Monday. Have a great week.